Coordinate with Congress. Congress has both the statutory and appropriations authority to impact the State Department's operations and has a strong interest in key aspects of American foreign policy. The Department must therefore take particular care in its interaction with Congress, since poor interactions with Congress, regardless of intentions, could trigger congressional pushback or have other negative impacts on the President's agenda. This will require particularly strong leadership of the Department of State's Bureau of Legislative Affairs. The Secretary of State and political leadership should ensure full coordination with the White House regarding congressional engagement on any State Department responsibility. This may lead to, for example, the President authorizing the State Department to engage with members of Congress and relevant committees on certain issues, including statutorily designated congressional consultations, but to remain radio silent on volatile or designated issues on which the White House wants to be the primary or only voice. All such authorized department engagements with Congress must be driven and handled by political appointees in conjunction with career officials who have the relevant expertise and are willing to work in concert with the President's political appointees on particularly sensitive matters. Respond vigorously to the Chinese threat. The State Department recently opened the Office of China Coordination, or China House. This office is intended to bring together experts inside and outside the State Department to coordinate U.S. government relations with China and advance our vision for an open, inclusive international system. Whether China House will streamline U.S. government communication, consensus, and action on China policy, given the presence of other agencies with strong competing or adverse interests, remains to be seen. The unit is dependent on adequate and competent staff being assigned by other bureaus within the State Department. Nonetheless, the concept is one a Republican administration should support, mutatis mutandis. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has been at war with the U.S. for decades. Now that this reality has been accepted throughout the government, the State Department must be prepared to lead the U.S. diplomatic effort accordingly. The centralization of efforts in one place is critical to this end. Review immigration and domestic security requirements. Arguably, the department's most noteworthy challenge on the global stage has been its handling of immigration and domestic security issues, which are inextricably related. The State Department's apparent posture towards these two issues, which are of paramount importance to the American people, has historically been that they are of lesser importance than other issues and that they can be treated as concessions in broader diplomatic engagements. In other instances in which access to the U.S. in the form of immigrant, permanent, and non-immigrant, temporary visas could potentially serve as diplomatic leverage, it is almost never used. To some degree, the State Department and many of its personnel appear to view the U.S. immigration system less as a tool for strengthening the United States and more as a global welfare program. To ensure the safety, security, and prosperity of all Americans, this must change. Below are several key areas in which the Department's formal and informal postures must adjust to reflect the current immigration and domestic security environment. Visa reciprocity. The United States should strictly enforce the doctrine of reciprocity when issuing visas to all foreign nationals. For too long, the U.S. has provided virtually unfettered access to foreign nationals from countries that do not respond in kind, including countries that are actively hostile to U.S. interests and nationals. Mandatory reciprocity will convey the necessary reality that other countries do not have an unfettered right to U.S. access and must reciprocally offer favorable visa-based access to U.S. nationals. The State Department's reaction time to other countries' changes in visa policies with respect to the U.S. must be streamlined to ensure it can be updated in real time. Section 243D, as in Delta, Visa Sanctions. Visa sanctions under Section 243 Delta of the Immigration and National Act, INA, enacted into law to motivate countries to accept the return of any nationals who have been ordered removed from the U.S., should be quickly and fully enforced. Recalcitrant countries that do not accept receipt of the returned nationals will risk suspension of issuance of all immigrant visas, all non-immigrant visas, or all visas. These country-specific sanctions should remain in place until the sanctioned country accepts the return of all its removal pending nationals and formally commits to future regular acceptance of its nationals. Black letter implementation of this law will demonstrate a heretofore lacking seriousness to the international community that other nations must respect U.S. immigration laws and work with federal authorities to accept returning nationals or lose access to the United States. Right-sizing refugee admissions. The Biden administration has engineered what is nothing short of a collapse of U.S. border security and interior immigration enforcement. This administration's humanitarian crisis, which is arguably the greatest humanitarian crisis in the modern era, one which has harmed Americans and foreign nationals alike, will take many years and billions of dollars to fully address. One casualty of the Biden administration's behavior will be the current form of the U.S. Refugee Administration Program, USRAP. The federal government's obligation to shift national security, essential screening, and vetting resources to the forged border crisis will necessitate an indefinite curtailment of the number of USRAP refugee admissions. The State Department's Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, which administers USRAP, must shift its resources to challenges stemming from the current immigration situation until the crisis can be contained and refugee-focused screening and vetting capacity can be reasonably be restored. That was not good. The federal government's obligation to shift national security essential screening and vetting resources to the forged border crisis will necessitate an indefinite curtailment of the number of U.S. RAP refugee admissions. The State Department's Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration, which administers U.S. RAP, must shift its resources to challenges stemming from the current immigration situation until the crisis can be contained and refugee-focused screening and vetting capacity can reasonably be restored. Strengthening bilateral and multilateral immigration-focused agreements. Restoration of both domestic security and the integrity of the U.S. immigration system should start with rapid reactivation of several key initiatives in effect at the conclusion of the Trump administration. Re-implementation of the Remain in Mexico policy, safe third country agreements, and other measures to address the influx of non-Mexican asylum applicants at the United States-Mexico border must be day one priorities. Although the State Department must rein in the C-175 authorities of other agencies, the Department of Homeland Security should retain or regain C-175 authorities for negotiating bilateral and multilateral security agreements. Evaluation of national security, vulnerable visa programs. To protect the American people, the State Department, in coordination with the White House and other security-focused agencies, should evaluate several key security-sensitive visa programs that it manages. Key programs include, but should not be limited to, the Diversity Visa Program, the F Student Visa Program, and J Exchange Visitor Visa Program. The State Department's evaluation must ensure that these programs are not only consistent with White House immigration policy, but also align with its national security obligations and resource limitations. Pivoting abroad. Personnel and management adjustments are crucial preludes to focus the State Department's mission, which is implementing the President's foreign policy agenda and, in doing so, ensuring that the interests of American citizens are given priority. That said, the next president must significantly reorient the U.S. government's posture toward friends and adversaries alike, which will include much more honest assessments about who are friends and who are not. This reorientation could represent the most significant shift in core foreign policy principles and corresponding actions since the end of the Cold War. Although not every country or issue area can be discussed in this chapter, below are examples of several areas in which a shift in U.S. foreign policy is not only important, but arguably undeniably existential. The point is not to assert that everyone in the evolving conservative movement, or in some cases, the growing bipartisan consensus, will agree with the details of this assessment. Rather, what is presented below demonstrates the urgency of these issues and provides a general roadmap for analysis. In a world on fire, a handful of nations require heightened attention. Some represent existential threats to the safety and security of the American people. Others threaten to hurt the U.S. economy, and others are wild cards whose full threat scope is unknown but nevertheless unsettling. The five countries on which the next administration should focus its attention and energy are China, Iran, Venezuela, Russia, and North Korea.